Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Glowing. I'm your host, Talia, and I'm so excited for this week's episode. This week, I got the pleasure of sitting down with Chelsea Bratches, who is a channel and an incredible woman, a spiritual teacher. She's honestly such an inspiration and a badass. So I can't wait for you to hear this conversation that we had. If you haven't already followed the podcast, go ahead and follow. And let's waste no time. Enjoy your listen. Chelsea recently had a video go viral on Instagram where she recorded herself channeling, and she gives us a definition of what that means to somebody who used to be a skeptic, but now she is a full practitioner. So she has an interesting perspective, and for anyone who is brand new to all the woo-woo stuff that I love to talk about, or is also a skeptic, she's a really awesome person to be hearing this conversation from. So I can't wait for you to listen. At the end of the episode, I want you to put in the comments what resonated most for you and what are you saying absolutely not, there's no way this is real. And then also, I would love if you send this episode to somebody that you know that would really benefit from it, or just that you would want to talk about this with. Let's get into it.
I'm Chelsea Bratches, and I am a verbal trance channel. I'm an energy healer, and I am a team member at Somatic Channeling, which is my sister's business. But I'm one of the lead practitioners, and I co-facilitate some of the offerings. So, yeah, I honestly, but I'm also just a normal girl.
Hmm.
I never expected to be here. My journey has been wild, so it still feels weird to say that that's me and what I do. I'm like still getting used to that.
Mm, yeah, right, right. That's so the nature of living your calling, where it
Totally.
it ends up being unexpected
Yes.
sometimes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So what were you expecting and how did your path shift and twist?
I honestly thought that by now I would be living in the suburbs, housewife with like a mom. I don't know. I just thought that. But I used to work in fashion and I've fashion and interior design. And so I always thought vocationally I would either end up, you know, in either of those industries.
Mm.
But I guess God had other plans for me.
Yeah. And I want to give just a little bit of an overview for people who don't
Mm.
know what channeling is or are just very new to this kind of spiritual offerings. How do you describe it to people who are completely new?
Yeah, so I mean, channeling is a broader term that
Mhm.
means a lot of different things. We all have heard that phrase, and I think, an artist is channeling something, if something comes through them. But ultimately, typically when you hear the word channeling, people are referring to verbal channeling, which is when the channel, the person, opens their field in their body for higher intelligence to move through them. And typically, when you hear channeling, they're talking about words, so verbal channeling. But there's also other ways to channel. There's, somatic channeling, which is what we'll get into soon, I'm sure. There's automatic writing. And also, yeah, like any form of art, or when you're in that flow state, you're channeling. But what I do is called deep trance channeling. So it means that I get into a trance and I surrender my body essentially. My body is almost like overtaken in a way by this higher intelligence, where like I'm almost sort of online as a moderator, but this higher intelligence wisdom is flowing through me. And there's different energies that speak through me, and my voice can change depending on which energy is coming through. So yeah, trance channeling is very much it's probably the most supernatural of all the methods of channeling, I would say. But there's just so many ways to channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And somatic channeling, if you want, do you want me to go into that? Okay. Somatic channeling is channeling with the body, where we're always the body is always the vessel for any type of channeling. But with somatic channeling, we are essentially opening up to a higher intelligence for support with healing and balancing our nervous system, our subtle body, our physical body, and sort of repatterning our field. And so it's really a mix of energy work and somatic therapy, as well as spiritual initiation and spiritual awakening. So really the first level of somatic channeling is building the trust with the body and learning how to get out of the head and tune deeply into the body. And then, from there, you begin to sense your energy field, like with the hands. Um, and over time, you're able to surrender very deeply to allow the body's intelligence to take over, to allow source consciousness to work through you. And it's a co-creative process, but it's really characterized by involuntary movement and mudras. So you'll see arms and, doing things like this, or maybe unwinding or brushing. There's all kinds of different movements that come through, and it's all channeled expression. There can also be sound that comes through in the form of light language or clicking, there's so many expressions of this work. And also at times you feel as if you're being bent into yogic postures. So it's really just this expression of intuitive or involuntary channeled movement that ultimately is clearing stored and stagnant energy that we're holding in the field from trauma, stress, whatever, what have you. And then reorganizing the field to bring you into greater alignment with what it is that you're here to do on a soul level.
Mm, so awesome.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
awesome. Can you tell me about how you found this work? Because I know for so many people, it sounds very out there.
Yes.
And even you
Yeah.
were saying, I did not imagine myself doing this.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I just never believed in energy healing. I think for most of my life, I was probably agnostic, although I didn't really have a way of identifying my spiritual beliefs. But my sister Taylor, the founder of Somatic Channeling, she was always very mystical, very into alternative healing modalities, and always really, I think, ahead of her time in terms of like the world of holistic medicine and whatever. Always kind of on the fringe. And I was I was like a normie, I did not believe in a lot of the things that she believed in. I didn't believe energy work was really real or effective. I thought trance channelers or verbal channelers were like con artists. Like I just couldn't understand how anyone could believe that was real. But
Mm.
I've learned it's the type of thing you kind of have to experience it yourself. And once you do have that encounter with something, some sort of unexplainable experience, it cracks the door open. I came to this work because I went through a really dark night of the soul that was characterized by a mental health condition called depersonalization derealization, which is DPDR for short. And a lot of people haven't heard of this condition, but it's essentially you feel like you're living in a dream all the time, but there's this feeling of like panic underneath it, and you just feel like you're not in your body.
Mhm.
You're sort of floating, and everything's a memory kind of. And it can be really destabilizing. And for me, it also came with chronic fatigue, vision challenges. It's like the most extreme possible brain fog. Your brain feels like mush. So it was very debilitating for me. I couldn't work. I had to close my business and work part-time as a nanny because I could not look at screens. I could hardly get through the day. And so I was in a really bad place, and Western medicine was not helping me. I did all kinds of forms of psychotherapy and things like that. I I had every system of the body tested, and all my labs would come back normal. I had an MRI. I really like went, all the way to figure out what was wrong with me and found nothing. And a friend of mine said she recommended trying out this exercise called TRE, trauma release exercise, because essentially DPDR is nervous system collapse. It's just like all the years of being in fight or flight caught up to me, and my body just like couldn't like shut down. So a friend, and I have complex PTSD, just like a lot of trauma in my background. So my friend recommended this exercise TRE. It's just like this very simple floor sequence. You can find it on YouTube, but it
Mhm.
essentially puts the body into a tremor. That it's like the body's tremoring, and what it is, it's shaking off this stored excess energy from being in fight or flight. The idea is really based off of nature, where certain animals, after if they, escape a near death experience, they will go, they'll have some time where their body is just kind of tremoring, and it's bringing the nervous system back into balance. So I started doing TRE, and I think that was my gateway to this work because it was sort of more like normal. It was more clinical, I'd say. But it showed me that the body is capable of moving on its own, because you just do this very simple thing, and then all of a sudden your body is like shaking. It's really wild and it feels really good. So I did a lot of that. And so finally, that cracked the door open. And one day my sister was like, I think you should try this thing that I've been doing. I'm calling it somatic channeling. It's sort of like energy work, but it could help you because it really grounds you into your body, and your condition is an out of body
Mm,
condition. And I was a little resistant to trying it because I just didn't believe in energy work, and I didn't, believe in any of the stuff she was into. And I would kind of roll my eyes every time she'd talk about her woo-woo stuff. But I was like, whatever, I'm desperate, I'll just try it. And so, yeah, I did. And she guided me through the opening sequence that she now teaches people and that I teach people. And it instantly reduced the severity of my DPDR from just like the worst end of the spectrum to like manageable, barely noticeable. So I was amazed, and I just really kept doing it more for the mental health challenges that I was working through at the time. And my father had just passed away. And so it was really helpful for me with my grief,
mm,
and also processing a lot of the trauma that I think my body was holding on to until it was safe to after he had passed.
mm, mm. Yeah, wow. It's
Yeah.
so cool to hear you talk about how you went from being a skeptic and rolling your eyes at your sister every time she brought it up to now teaching this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, over time, it just became something bigger. I just kept doing it because it felt really good to do it, and it helped the severity of my symptoms. But man, it just over time, it saved my life, I think. It's one of the things that saved my life, because I truly wanted to die because I just could not. I was in such a bad place. And part of that was I was in sort of an existential crisis where I was like, what's the point of living? Because when you feel like you're not in your body and you're not experiencing your life, you're just in a dream all the time, and you're exhausted and you can't function, you can't think. It's just like, what's the point of this? And so it sparked all kinds of existential soul searching type questions. And for me, somatic channeling, and for most people, honestly, although you can probably do this practice without having a spiritual component to it, but it really sent me on a journey of seeking. And I started to have mystical experiences, encounters with something holy and something divine through the practice that I really wasn't looking for and wasn't expecting, but ultimately sent me on my path and changed the course of my life, obviously. So it's, the first experience was like I had like a past life memory, and I didn't even know if I believed in past lives at that moment. But I just had this like knowing this, I just knew it was a past life, even though I didn't know if I believed in past lives. It's kind of hard to explain. But yeah, so I kept having it kind of, like that type of experience, weird, like almost psychedelic experiences just through this practice alone.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, when you started out, so really the thing that got you back to feeling okay, feeling like you had your feet on the ground, like you were actually here again, was reconnecting with your body. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the starting point when you work with anybody, when you teach this work. And then you can go into having these supernatural kind of experiences. How
Yeah.
do you how do you protect your energy or keep yourself clear so that you can have both your feet on the ground and be completely physically here and also be a channel or be going into these supernatural experiences?
Well, I think I'm still learning how to protect my energy from the lens of just conserving energy, because
Mm.
when I go into a trance channeling session, it's incredibly physically draining for me. Not all channels are like that. I don't know if it's just something I have to build the stamina for, or if it's just that's just how it is for me. And, everyone's a little different with how they channel. But for me, protecting my physical energy, I've just very recently started to learn that I have to set limits in my calendar of how often I can do it. I'm
Mhm.
starting to learn I have to like bake days in for rest. I'm also a manifester in human design, which means like my energy flow and my working style is short bursts of impact. And then like there's a need to rest and retreat afterwards. So it's really important for me to protect my physical energy by way of conserving it so that I can like have this burstful, like this really intense, like outpouring of channeled wisdom. But then I need to rest and recharge my batteries. So learning how to work in that burst style is something that is new, but I'm trying to navigate. And then in terms of like do you mean protecting my energy almost like from dense energies or entity attachment, things like that?
Yeah. Hmm.
So with that, everyone has their different opinions on that. And I can't possibly claim to know what's real or not, but the way that I choose to look at it is I really feel like the best shield that we can have from, you know, dark energies, whatever, is just heart frequency, just dropping into the heart. And I feel like what we focus on gives us a lot of that's what we experience. And I just honestly, I don't really believe in entity attachments, and like maybe that will change. Um, I don't know. I mean, I can't possibly claim to know, but I actually view it from the lens of just energy and trauma. And there
Mm-hmm.
can be collective energies, that we can absorb, of course, because as intuitives, we're absorbing a lot of energy. But I feel like for me, I feel like the idea of like blaming something in my life on an energy, an entity is like a disempowering angle to take. And also, I really believe that everything in God's land is in perfect balance. And so I don't really like fear that anymore. I used to, but I've gone on this whole discernment journey to where that feels true to me, at least right now. And that totally could change. Maybe I'm a fool. Maybe I will have that experience, but it just feel like if there's no way to prove it, I would rather choose the empowering thought rather than living in fear because I really have such a connection to my guides and I trust God, I trust my team. And I trust that no matter what happens or what comes my way, like I will be able to move through it and I can, clear it. So I just don't want to live in fear like that. But at the same time, as an intuitive, you pick up a lot of energy, but somatic channeling is the practice that I do because also I'll sit down and set the intention of clearing my field. Also, when I'm working with people, I set boundaries. The energies really do respond to boundaries. So I name exactly who I want to let in. I don't say this out loud, but making sure that my field is not taking on anything that is not for me and like vice versa. I don't want anything from my field to get into the clients. Afterwards, I will ask to be un for to be un like I say, please unwind my field from yours, from the client. And often this like crazy like spinning motion happens and I can feel the energy unwinding. And then, we say the closing prayer, and I literally like will make sure that I can feel the edges of my field and I can feel the edges of their field. And then we just like we always start with the intentions and then end with the closing intentions of declaring that it's complete, or, whatever. Um, so yeah, it's important to set intentions and set energetic boundaries. But I also always make sure before I enter meditation that I'm dropping into the heart frequency. So for me, that looks like I love children. And anytime I think about a child, it just makes me so happy and fills me with just this pure love. And to me, I feel like that's the best protection that I can have is just starting and ending with the heart space. So I'll start with the dropping in that frequency and feeling gratitude, feeling the joy of children, feeling gratitude for this, this experience, this client, whatever. And I spend some time there. And then at the end, I do a prayer that really connects me with a deep feeling of peace and gratitude. So I just, yeah, I feel like I just don't live in fear because I just trust that I can handle it and I can always clear through somatic channeling if I feel like something has latched on that's not for my highest growth and healing. So,
Mm,
and sometimes it's our highest growth and healing is to experience those denser frequencies
mhm,
because it's by way of that contrast that we can discern what feels good and what feels like it's not in service of our our highest self.
absolutely. I love that response that you intentionally choose not to live in fear. And actually by doing that, that is part of the protection that you
Yeah.
give yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've experienced through channeling energies that don't feel nice.
Mhm.
And I think that's just such an important part of the journey. I think every channel probably has encounters where they're like, this is not my team. And I know it's not my team.
Mhm.
And that's important to feel that and to discern by way of contrast what, if it's something you want to engage with or not. And so it's like, and it's just so simple. I just really feel like you go into the heart and you just set the intention, the boundary. It just constantly amazes me how much they respond to whatever boundaries and intentions that you set.
Yeah, and I can imagine too that that builds up a lot of self-trust with yourself that,
Yeah.
like you said, I can handle this, even if
Yeah.
something doesn't go the way that I want to, an entity does attach itself, I can handle that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly. Because it's my faith in God or what I call God or the universe source. It comes down to faith, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious to hear more about your journey with faith because you said you were agnostic, identifying, and now
Mm-hmm.
you're speaking about God. There's
Mm-hmm.
that question. I also want to hear too about your spirit guides and how
Mm-hmm.
you guide people to understand your spirit guides, connect with
Mm-hmm.
your spirit guides, so you can answer
Yeah.
whichever one you feel called to.
Okay, yeah. I mean, my journey with faith, so I grew up as a child going to an Episcopalian church, I think. It's like very traditional, boring. I just remember as a kid being so bored and wanting to leave. Honestly, my clearest memories from church are I always had to wear tights. I was 3 and I hated the way tights felt. And I remember being in Sunday school and there was this girl who would always wear these ruby red slippers. And I just remember like being so envious of her ruby red slippers. Like that's the extent of my church memories. But then when I was in middle school, I was like confirmed into a congregational church. But it was always in the beginning this just thing that I kind of just had to do. It wasn't like a belief. It was more just like my parents are making me do this. But I did not feel like a resonance with it.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I was in high school, I had a very brief stint. I had a very brief like Jesus God phase that honestly was mainly because I had a crush on the pastor's son because we worked together. My after school job, I worked with him and I just like had a crush on him. So I started going to, and it was like a new agey kind of, not new age, sorry, modern Christian church, with like a band and stuff.
Mhm.
But so I went to that church for a little, but again, like I remember feeling uncomfortable and feeling like there wasn't totally a resonance. And I think it just, so yeah, after that little brief stint, I decided I don't feel aligned with this. I just felt like there was a lot of stuff that didn't make sense, and a lot of hypocrisy, and I was having a hard time reconciling that. So I just, walked away and then didn't think much of it for years. And then fast forward, I'm in my mid 20s in California. So I'm 37 now. I'm in my mid 20s in California, and I started getting into tarot cards. And I believed in like psychics and stuff, but I thought it was just kind of more fun and interesting. I didn't have like a spiritual practice per se, but I thought tarot was kind of fun. And it would be fun to pull oracle cards with friends at a party, that kind of thing. So yeah, I kind of was like, have had these like little stints, but I just never really found the thing that resonated with me. And after that California tarot stint, I'd gotten into like Esther Hicks, which I don't even think I realized was a channeler at that time. But again, very short-lived, and I just started to not feel a resonance, and I started to notice that it almost was like bad for me because I was so focused on managing my vibration, and I didn't even really understand what that meant, to where it almost became this unhealthy like obsession with like, I almost feel like it made me avoid my feelings because I didn't want to mess up my vibration. I just became exhausted with it, that at that point I just like walked away from all spiritual things, and I really kind of shut the door on spirituality and developed quite a resistance to woo-woo people, to religion, So yeah. And then, fast forward a few years ago, and now, and I started doing somatic channeling, and that's really what cracked the door open for me again. So yeah.
Yeah, wow. And every time you found, okay, this is not for me, it's almost like it was sharpening your discernment that you
Yeah.
could be as clear and empowered and like stable in your faith that you are now.
Yeah. 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 I actually have not even thought of it that way, but you're so spot on with that. Yeah. It's beautiful.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. What was the other question? I'm sorry, I forget.
About your spirit guides and how you walk people through connecting to theirs.
Yeah, so my team of guides, when I first asked who I'm channeling, they showed me this image of the Last Supper. And it was Jesus in the middle, and then it was an alien and like a blob of like blue and white light, and then like a Hindu deity with a bunch of arms, like a Buddha, and then some other apostle looking, biblical looking characters. And they said that we are a group of beings from disparate, they use that word, I had to Google what that was, from disparate systems of belief and different star systems aligned on the same mission. And the mission is helping raise humanity's consciousness closer to God, closer to love, like back to the source, to raise the vibration of the planet and humanity. Um, and they describe themselves like the UN of the cosmos, kind of. They were like, so there's kind of representatives of different paths. And so they all speak together sometimes as like one voice, and then other times a specific like representative or a specific ascended master will step forward to speak individually. Um, and yeah, they told me that they're from the 12th dimension, which also was really interesting because this was, well over a year ago, and I didn't really know anything about dimensions. And to be honest, totally forgot about that. And I found an old transcript recently, and I was like, the 12th dimension? That's wild. I like Googled it. I'm like, is there even a 12th dimension? I don't know how many there are. So yeah, so it's very high level wisdom, which means it's like extremely zoomed out. They don't get in the weeds of like timelines and alien disclosure and predictions and like politics. It's just like fear or love. Fear
Yeah.
or love, which is it? Like it's really pretty simple, but it's like we need to be reminded of that vantage point sometimes because we get so caught up in our humanness.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I work with people to guide them into their own spiritual gifts, I use the modality of somatic channeling. So I guide them through, the similar process that I went through, which is really honestly like engaging with, in work with a therapist, because everyone's journey is different. It's not a one and done. It's really not up to me. It's up to like God, your higher power, source, whatever, what your soul came here to do, how often you practice, how do you contribute to the process through your own mind and your, humanness. So it's really such a journey, but some people, I'll guide them through the practice of somatic channeling, which helps deepen their inner connection and helps deepen their inner knowing, which will then give them the ability to connect with their team of guides.
Mm.
So typically it starts with just the first layer of somatic channeling, of just going through the modality, the opening sequence of movements that we do, getting out of the head, trusting the body enough to surrender. And that over time, when you do that enough, you are really able to put the mind aside so your guides can connect with you, because the thing that shuts down the channel the fastest is the mind. So when the ego comes in, it's really hard to hear your guides. But I also really am helping people to trust what comes through, because a lot of times people will have experiences like they see visions, they hear a word, they get a download. Um, and then right when the session, we close the channel after practicing, the mind comes in and says, you made it up. Or, people will come to me because they have had mystical experiences and they say, I don't know if I'm going crazy. I don't know if this is like my mind or if I'm being guided to this. And so through the process of somatic channeling, it really helps you discern, if is it the mind, or is it your inner guidance, or is it your higher self? Is it your team of guides? Um, are you going crazy? Like, it just, you connect so deeply to the body and the subtle body so that you're able to really discern these different, really comes down to frequencies. It's like these subtle like textures and feelings almost, where you're just start to develop that that relationship with your team, and your relationship with the higher intelligence in your body as well.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a lot of just getting them into the body, getting the mind out of the way, helping them discern through the feeling state in the body if something feels true, if it feels like it's from them or a guide.
We're going to take a quick break because I just want to say hi. I'm just giving you a little listening break because I know when you're listening to a long episode for some time, your mind can kind of wander. And so this is a hey, interrupting your regular programming, commercial, not commercial, so that you can refocus and listen to the last part of our conversation, which is the best part. That's always how it goes with podcasts. As you talk, you get more comfortable and more fun stories come out. So Chelsea's about to tell us some really fun stories, so keep listening. Some people will come to you and say, I don't know if I'm going crazy, if I'm losing my mind, but this
Yeah.
thing happened to me. So how do you discern who you say what to or what language you use when you talk about this with people? Because it definitely does, and I find this with myself too, when I'm speaking to people, sounds a little crazy and I don't want to come off crazy.
Yeah,
But
totally.
also, yeah, how do you work with that?
That's a good question. I mean, because I think it's different if it's like a client or just like a person out in the social world. So when it's a client, I typically will ask them, we'll usually do like a discovery call, or we'll spend the first few minutes of the session just kind of understanding where they're coming from and what draws them to the work. And often I will ask if they have like a religious background or what their spiritual beliefs are. And I can sort of, I think just there's a certain level of just understanding people and like maybe just emotional intelligence or something that sort of can guide the language, because there's a lot of ways to talk about somatic channeling too, because you can take an angle of it's more like a somatic and a nervous system approach, which it is that. Or, there's people very on the fringes of the spiritual world, and that may resonate more with them. Or, my mom is a somatic channeling practitioner, but she's a Christian. So we're calling in the Holy Spirit, or she's calling in Jesus. Her image, what her clairvoyance is very Christian coded. So yeah, so we'll kind of gather information just by asking some questions on the intake. Um, but when it comes to out in the world socially, I still sort of gauge the audience, but I will say I used to be a lot, it used to be a lot harder for me to own my truth. So like I would say things like I'd be very shy about it. Like I would avoid the question altogether. Just say, I'm like fun employed right now. I don't know. Or I would just say, oh, I work, in spirituality. Oh, I'm a meditation teacher. But over time, I've just grown so strong in my authenticity and like, this is what I do, take it or leave it.
Mm,
And part of that has been because I realized that people are actually so interested, and whether or not they resonate with it or whether they think I'm crazy or not, I sort of feel like God or source, like that need it. I don't know what God's plan is for me and how I'm supposed to serve. So there's just been times where I've felt kind of like, even if that person thinks that I'm nuts, for all I know, that's like a seed planted for them that maybe 10 years from now, they're going to have a mystical encounter and maybe they'll remember that conversation and
mm,
it will be an invitation of some sort. Like, I just have to trust that I'm
mm,
part of a bigger plan that has nothing to do with me. And I think that the more that I've stepped into like service and feeling like I'm here to serve with this gift, the more I'm able to own who I am and what I do. Um, but that being said, I think that I sort of like intuitively know when to turn on my like kind of like charisma, self-deprecating humor about it and when to be in my power about it. And sort of it's always a dance of both. So like, you know, for example, if I'm talking, I was at the sushi restaurant. I sat at the sushi bar and this old couple starts talking to me. And this man, he's like a 70-year-old white man who is like this business guy, like very serious. And he starts asking me what I do, and I tell him, and he was really giving me a hard time. But
mm,
like for him, it's like so someone like that, I'm like, I know this is gonna sound crazy, okay? Trust me. Like I used to think it was crazy too. So I'll like pad it a little bit with that sort of thing, or some of the self-deprecating humor, which is like my sense of humor anyways. Because I think that it makes it opens the invitation for people to have this self-awareness that like, yeah, this is gonna sound nuts.
mm,
Because I think a lot of what turned me off from the spiritual community in the beginning, like I never wanted to be, I was really turned off by the channeling woo-woo world. Because I just felt like people were so ungrounded. And it's like, okay, reality check. Most people think this is batshit crazy. Like it's not normal to the average person. And like that's okay.
mm,
But like I feel like a lot of people in the spiritual space like would not have that awareness at all, and they would almost get pissed if you like thought that they were crazy. And it's like, okay, we need to be grounded,
mhm,
because the more that we're grounded, the more we are inviting people into the world.
mm,
So yeah, I just think it's good to kind of have that self-awareness, but also to not hide who you are and what you do.
mm,
And I've been shocked, absolutely shocked, like by the conversations it opens. Like I will, be talking to somebody and I'm like, this guy is gonna think I'm this is gonna end the conversation real quick once I tell him what I do. And to my surprise, it's like the opposite. And it's like it feels like this person's been waiting their whole life to tell somebody about that one experience that they had that they never knew if it was like, you know what I mean? So you may be I'm often surprised by how receptive people are to it. And I also think that when you own it more, like it's sort of you take yourself more seriously with it, it's sort of reflected back.
totally, totally.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's a journey. It's such a journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love getting to talk to you at the point where you are at now, where I can tell you are very grounded and owning it. And like you said, what that's opening up for you and for everybody, because you shifted more into being of service, not making it about you and your fear of what would happen, of being judged or whatever would
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah,
I love that.
absolutely. I mean, I just had so much fear of posting on Instagram. I had a TikTok, and TikTok was like my practice zone where it was my practice in climbing cringe mountain, as they say, because it wasn't connected to my name. I've since changed my TikTok handle to Chelsea Bratches, but it was the guide speak before. And I was like, we're not syncing these contacts. No way. So it was sort of like my area of the internet where I could experiment and get comfortable with sharing this.
Mm.
And it also sort of was like my training ground for navigating trolls and haters.
Mm.
And that was hugely important for me for my discernment journey as well, because there was times when I was like, what if they're right? What if I am doing something demonic or what if I am being led by a false light or whatever the Christians say?
Mm.
And so it really was helpful for me in multiple ways, not just the visibility stuff. But yeah, I had such a hard time with coming out of the spiritual closet on Instagram because I used to have a following for clothing, like styling. Like I would post my outfits and I sold vintage clothing, and so I would post thrift hauls, and I would do like Instagram story sales. So that is what my following was for, but also just like every person I've ever met in my life, like my old coworkers and bosses and cousins and aunts and uncles and ex-boyfriends. It's just like, what are they going to think of me,
Mm.
but at some point I just had to do it, I guess, and it's been awesome. It's been a really great response, which feels really good.
Mm. What was that tipping point for you?
It was, I had gosh, I had made a couple posts on Instagram about somatic channeling, and one of them was like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid to say this, but I'm a verbal channel and whatever. But even after that, I mean, for months, I couldn't bring myself to actually post the verbal channeling.
Mhm.
Um, and then at one point, I honestly do not know. I almost feel like it's astrological slash my guides, because I just woke up one day and I almost like blacked out. Like I don't even remember. I didn't think about it. I just set the camera up and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this now. So it was honestly kind of bizarre. And then I found out later that day, because I'm not super big into astrology, but like I'll see stuff in my feed. Um, and the next day I saw that the day I posted it, or like the week or something, it was like some big, I think it was like 0 degree Aries or something like that, where it's very much like go time
Mm.
is sort of the energy of it. It's like the beginning of something, and it's very like fiery starting point energy.
Mm.
So that was kind of interesting to discover. So I honestly I don't know what came over me. I must have just reached a point where I was so sick of myself being in hiding and like the mental anguish of just like, how am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? Just I must have just gotten too sick of myself and just said, whatever, I'm just going to do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
And since you did, what has changed for you?
Oh my gosh. I have more than I went from having like under 10,000, like 9,000 something Instagram followers to over 20,000 in like a very short period of time. My calendar is like booked out solid for a while. So it's been amazing. Um, but it's also presented a new set of challenges for me as well. So it's just always, these layers of learning and growth that just, you know, always something to,
Mm.
always an opportunity to grow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love this part of your story too, because for people listening, and this is something that I talk about a lot, on the other side of that fear, there's so much that opens up for you, so much growth, so
Yeah.
much abundance, or however you want to say. I
Yeah.
mean, more followers, more,
Yeah.
calendars booked. And
Yeah.
it's a simple thing, but it's also
Yeah.
like that's more impact that you can have, more and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I remember before I forgot to mention this actually, before I like ripped the band-aid off and made that post, I had channeled a message for myself that my guides were like, we'd like you to work on your solar plexus and your lower chakra. So your solar plexus is tied to identity and willpower and self-discipline and your personal authority and your personal power. And then, the lower chakras, like they all have different meanings, but the main one was really the solar plexus. But I think also the sacral chakra is about like creating creativity, and like I view almost the solar plexus being tied to manifestation with the sacral and the solar plexus. But then also the root chakra is about, money and safety and your right to be here and your stability. And so they were like, work on the lower chakras, but also set the intention as often as you can to work on the solar plexus
Mm.
chakra. And so I would get into my somatic channeling practice and say, okay, you told me last time we talked to do this. So I'm setting that intention and do it. So I would, often I would be working with somatic channeling, like I'll be unwinding things or moving energy out of those chakras. And I did that sort of consistently, just about 10 minutes a day for, a few weeks and kind of off and on, but over about a month of setting that intention fairly inconsistently. Then I would just one day ripped the band-aid off
Mm.
and posted that. And so I think it was very helpful because it was sort of working through my fears, my visibility fears. And the day that post went viral, I all of a sudden, like I posted it and then I checked it and it had like a few thousand views. And I was like, oh my gosh, wow, that's pretty good. A few thousand views. And I just like put my phone away and I had a bunch of work to do. And I all of a sudden got this really bad stomach ache. And then the stomach ache was there for a few hours. Then I got a sore throat and I was like, oh no, I think I'm getting sick. This is so weird. But I like never get stomach ache. So it was so odd. Sore throat. Like maybe I had just gotten sick with tonsil stuff. So it just was odd. And so I was like, let me lay down for a little bit. And I lay down, and as I'm laying there, I picked up my phone, and the views had skyrocketed to like, I don't know, something with a K. And I suddenly got this download. I was like, whoa, my stomach ache and my sore throat, it's because I was picking up on the fact that like I'm being seen even though I wasn't consciously aware of it, but it's like
Mm.
that was going on in the background. And it was like sort of a clearing, I think, that occurred of just that fear of visibility and fear of using my voice and expressing authentically. Because I mean, so yeah, it's super, super interesting. It's just such a good example of the way that the energetics, the physical body, and our external reality are all working together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this story. Story. Because it also shows how you say inconsistently, but actually I would argue that it was consistent, showing up
Yeah,
like 10 minutes a day, doing this work with
yeah,
yourself, on yourself,
yeah,
to then get to a point where, okay, now I can rip the band-aid off.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just interesting because I feel like the ripping the band-aid off part, like I said, I just wasn't thinking about it. It wasn't like, okay, today's the day, I'm gonna do it. I don't know. I just like sat down and like did it. But I think it's just interesting to think back on the fact that I had been working on those.
Mm.
So sometimes when we work on our energy field and change our vibration or whatever you want to call it, the results of that can be sort of subtle. Like you may not even realize that it's like linked to the inner work that you're doing. It's like the manifestations or the way that you're able to move through the world, you change in such a subtle way. Sometimes it's not subtle at all, but sometimes it is. And it's hard sometimes to even make that connection, I think.
Absolutely. Right, because you're working on the level that just makes it feel natural and normal to then one day show up and do the thing that you were so scared to do a month ago.
Totally. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's like, wow, I don't know. I'm just different. I don't know what happened, but because
Right.
it's all invisible. Like we're
Right.
working with the unseen.
Hmm.
So it's subtle. They call it the energy field the subtle body.
Hmm.
It's subtle energy shifts.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
then it's not so subtle, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it's so cool. So
Mm,
cool.
yeah,
Thank
I'm
you for
super,
sharing.
super grateful. And I'm just so grateful for everybody who's been so supportive and like the nicest. I'm just like, oh my gosh, people are so nice. I've gotten like maybe 2 weird comments. Like it's just I'm blown away by the support that people have shown. And I'm really, really, really grateful that I'm able to offer this to people and that people are finding such a resonance with it.
Mm.
Um, I'm just blown away. I honestly thought I was going to get chewed up and spit out in the comments. I was like bracing myself. Oh God, what are they going to say?
Mm-mm. That's so wonderful too. So for people who are listening who resonate with being scared to do something that you know is part of your journey, that's authentic to you, but just sharing it with the world is that next step. Take this story as your inspiration that even if
Yes.
you have a feeling, oh my gosh, you're bracing for getting chewed up and spat out and all the haters, that maybe you will end up being so supported and
Yeah.
experiencing all of these nice comments and wonderful things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly, you really made me so surprised,
Mm.
truly. And also like and if not, there's also trusting that that's part of your journey and that's you are still on your path because don't forget that I spent a year posting on TikTok and getting hate in the comments and people telling me I'm demonic and shit like that. So, and getting no views, getting 100 views on a post. So it's a process, but it's all perfectly, it's all perfect and
Mhm.
exactly how it should be. We just got to keep going.
Mhm. Yes, amen. Do you want to share with
Yeah.
people where they can find you?
Yeah. My website is profoundhouse.com. My Instagram is just at Chelsea Bratches, and that's my TikTok too. But I host a monthly live group channeling event called the Jesus Transmissions. That is really, there's so many people in the New Age community right now who are having like Christ consciousness awakenings. So I created this event for the type of person who is maybe deconstructing their faith but wants to connect to Jesus or Yeshua, for the new age person who is had an encounter with Yeshua in an ayahuasca ceremony or something, or somebody who is just feeling called towards these higher values. It's really an interfaith experience, but I will call forth Yeshua. I'll channel him in trance. You have an opportunity to submit a question for Yeshua, and the moderator feeds it to me while I'm in trance. And we do a group meditation. This is really just like a heart opening, beautiful transmission of both energy and spiritual advice and guidance and wisdom from very high Christ consciousness. So I would love for people to join that. The next one is June 27th, but I'll post July and August dates soon. Um, and yeah, and I offer one-on-one verbal channeling sessions, one-on-one learned somatic channeling sessions, as well as spiritual mentorship calls. So if anybody ever wants to just like pick my brain or ask questions about how to discern or like tips for how to awaken their channel without actually going through the journey of somatic channeling, I'm available for that. Also, just processing mystical experiences. It's just been there's a lot of people who are having mystical experiences or supernatural consciousness expanding experiences, and they don't have anyone to talk to about it without sounding crazy and getting put in a psych ward, like truly.
Mhm.
So I offer that as well. And my sister has a school training program for people who want to go really deep in the somatic channeling journey and eventually become practitioners of that work. So you can find that on her website, somaticchanneling.com. And then we also have a community portal for people who are doing somatic channeling because a lot of people awaken to it on their own. So it's community.somaticchanneling.com if you want to just be in community with other people who are just as out there and doing the same stuff as you. And we have 2 events a month, a processing group and then another type of group gathering. So
Awesome.
lots going on in this world, that's for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a fun conversation.
It was. Loved Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I enjoyed this. If you want to hear more conversations like this one, let me know because there's a lot more where this comes from. I am so loving the woo, and I love to talk about it with people who are grounded and coming from a place of wanting to teach you how to trust yourself. So, I would love to have more conversations like this on my podcast. And if you are somebody who wants to be a guest on my podcast, reach out to me. Bye for now.